Oxford University, one of the most prestigious institutions in the world, known for its history, intellect, and world-class scholars. But one afternoon, during what was supposed to be an ordinary lecture, something extraordinary happened. Ibrahim Traoré copyright, the young revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, delivered a 10-minute speech that not only shook the walls of Oxford a broken bar but also completely changed the life of one professor forever. Part 1 at the setting at Oxford. Narrator: It was a packed hall at Oxford. Students, professors, researchers all eager to hear the words of Ibrahim Traoré copyright, the 36-year-old president of Burkina Faso, who rose to global prominence with his unapologetic stance against neo-colonialism. For many, this was a chance to hear directly from a man who dared to speak truth to power. But for one Oxford professor, it was the beginning of the end of his academic career. Visuals: Oxford's old buildings, audience entering hall, camera zooming to stage. Part 2 A Traoré copyright's reputation. Narrator: Ibrahim Traoré copyright is not your typical world leader. Unlike many presidents who live in palaces and speak in carefully polished diplomatic language, Traoré copyright is blunt, fearless, and speaks directly to the people. He has called out France for exploiting African nations, he has challenged Western powers, and he has openly demanded respect and sovereignty for Africa. So when Oxford invited him, many expected a heated discussion. After all, universities like Oxford are also battlegrounds of ideas where colonial history and modern politics often clash. Part 3 Other professor. Narrator: Among the panel of academics was Professor William Hartwell, a well-known lecturer in international relations. Hartwell had built his career writing papers defending Western humanitarian interventions in Africa. For years, he lectured on how Africa benefits from Western aid, and how European powers guided the continent towards development. To his students, Hartwell was confident, almost arrogant, the type of professor who believed he could intellectually defeat anyone in debate. He didn't expect what was about to happen. Visuals: actor portraying professor preparing notes, looking self-assured. Part 4 The speech begins. Narrator: As Ibrahim Traoré copyright took the stage, silence fell. Dressed simply, without the usual flamboyance of politicians, he began his 10-minute speech. Traoré copyright looked around the room and said in a calm but commanding voice, Africa does not need lessons in civilization. Africa does not need saviors. Africa needs justice. The room froze. Within seconds, everyone realized this was not going to be an ordinary lecture. Part 5 Calling out hypocrisy. Narrator: Traoré copyright spoke with precision. He called out the hypocrisy of Western governments that preach democracy abroad but support dictators when it suits their interests. He highlighted how Oxford professors often teach about development while ignoring the theft of African resources. Then, looking directly at Professor Hartwell, Traoré copyright said, For decades, you have written that colonialism ended. But tell me, Professor, when France takes uranium from Niger, leaving the people in darkness, is that freedom? When corporations exploit our gold, our oil, our land, while our children starve, is that development? When your universities publish books that glorify colonizers but erase African voices, is that knowledge? The audience erupted in murmurs. Some clapped, some gasped, but Professor Hartwell's face turned pale. Part 6 The clash. Narrator: Unable to stay silent, Professor Hartwell stood up. His voice shook slightly as he tried to respond. Mr. President, you misunderstand. The West provides aid, education, and structure. Without these, Africa would collapse into chaos. The room went silent again. Everyone turned to Ibrahim Traoré copyright. He leaned forward and said, Professor, do you know what chaos is? Chaos is when foreign powers draw lines on a map and call them borders. Chaos is when millions of Africans are forced to fight wars created by colonial greed. Chaos is when you steal resources for centuries and then give us aid with strings attached. That, Professor, is the real chaos, and it did not come from Africa. It came from Europe. The students exploded in applause. Part 7 The turning point. Narrator: In just minutes, Traore copyright dismantled the professor's entire career of arguments. Every word struck like a hammer. Students who once sat quietly in Hartwell's lectures now openly questioned him. Some even recorded the exchange, and within hours, clips of the debate went viral on social media. Visuals, social media posts, Twitter hashtags, TikTok videos spreading. Part 8 followed. Narrator: the backlash was immediate. Students demanded Oxford review its curriculum on African history. They petitioned for African scholars to be given more platforms instead of repeating colonial narratives. But the biggest impact was on Professor Hartwell. Overnight, he became a symbol of outdated colonial thinking. Students no longer respected his authority. His writings were criticized worldwide. Invitations to speak at conferences dried up. Oxford quietly reassigned his lectures, citing student concerns. Colleagues distanced themselves, and soon, the once celebrated professor faded into obscurity. Part 9 Why Traore copyright speech mattered. Narrator: what Ibrahim Traore copyright did in those 10 minutes was more than just win an argument. He exposed the deep cracks in Western academia. He reminded the world that knowledge is not neutral. It is often shaped by power, by politics, by who gets to write history. For African students at Oxford, it was empowering. They saw a leader stand tall and say what they had always felt but were too afraid to express. For the global audience, it was a reminder that the age of unquestioned Western authority is ending. Part 10 The legacy. Narrator: today, that 10-minute speech is remembered not only as a defining moment in Oxford's history, but also as a symbol of resistance. Ibrahim Traore copyright showed that even the most prestigious institutions can be challenged day and defeated day by truth. And as for Professor Hartwell, a broken bar, his life was never the same. One speech destroyed decades of carefully built reputation, because when faced with truth, even the most powerful lies crumble. In the end, it was not just a speech, it was a revolution in words. A reminder that the fight for justice is not fought only on battlefields, but also in classrooms, in debates, in the minds of future generations.